People call me up and ask if a property is going to be suitable for septic, and the most important issue is soils. So we want to evaluate soils, and I often advise people how they can begin that soil evaluation themselves. The minimum soil thickness that you need to permit a septic system is only 12 inches of normally unsaturated soil. And that can be determined by a hand excavation down to, say, 2 feet deep. Because what we're looking for when we look at the soil profile, we're looking for indications of historical prolonged saturation that occurs during wet season. So if the soil is saturated beneath a septic drain field, there's no oxygen making its way into, or very, very little making its way into that saturated soil. And so we only consider the unsaturated thickness from ground surface down to be the soil that's effectively treating the wastewater, septic tank effluent, which is free of solids. And so we want to, the various designs and options for septic for different drain fields go from, say, 12 inches up to 5 feet of thickness of normally unsaturated soil. And this is beneath the infiltrative surface. So a typical drain field has trenches excavated, let's say 2 feet deep, and backfilled with gravel and with a pipe to send your septic tank effluent and distribute it into the ground. So we only look at from the bottom of that trench and downward when evaluating available soil. So when we say you need 12 inches of soil or 36 inches or 60 inches, that's from the bottom of the trench downward. Mm-hmm. And so for a conventional gravity discharge system, the minimum trench depth is about 12 inches, and that means your trenches are pretty shallow. And so depending on the soil type, you need between 3 and 5 feet of normally unsaturated soil thickness beneath your trenches. And so that means you need between 4 feet and 6 feet minimum, depending on soil type, of unsaturated thickness. And if you want to have your trenches deeper, then you have to go even more deeper. And so someone can do hand excavation and discover that they have either hard pan or a restrictive layer, bedrock, not very common, but that's another restriction. Any restrictive layer means that defines your available thickness. But also, if we see signs of historical saturation, mottling is a classic one. It's that rust-colored bands from the natural redox reaction that occurs in an oxygen-deprived saturated situation. So these rust bands that show up when you dig, they often indicate how shallow the seasonally shallow groundwater can come up to during the wet season. And that's our limit of how much soil we have. Is that clear?
Mostly, yeah. So a strong clay soil is not great for septic then, because it doesn't allow permeation, right?
Exactly. It's considered restrictive.
Restrictive.
And hard pan is very common around here. But the technical term is glacial till. Mm-hmm. The compacted material that was underneath glaciers for thousands of years, it becomes very compacted. And even though if you break it down, if you were to dig into that and break it up, it consists of sand and gravel and silts and so on. Mm-hmm. In its compact form, it may not allow permeation. And so it's considered restrictive. And then whenever you get to that, and you counter that layer, that's your limit of available thickness.